opportunity to do so, I'd certainly be interested to see how the opposition would vote on that.
Question number 9, Chris Bishop.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. To the Minister of Police. Has a formal complaint of alleged bullying been made against Deputy Police Commissioner Wally Homaha, and has an employment investigation commenced?
Thank you,
The
Sir.
Honourable Andrew Little.
On behalf of the Minister of Police, the police advise that they have received 2 formal complaints in relation to bullying allegations against Deputy Commissioner Wally Homaha. These have been notified to the Independent Police Conduct Authority in accordance with the usual process for these complaints.
Supplementary. What does the Minister's diary indicate he is doing between 2 and 3 o'clock on Thursday, 6 September?
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Minister, I cannot answer that question because I do not have that detail in front of me.
Question number 10, Dr Shane Retty.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the